What's up, everyone? It is the 14th of April. We are on the week before the Tesla earnings. I know all of us are very excited about that. And so we're bringing to you another Tesla Beat podcast with obviously the regulars. So let's add in Amy, who's
Hello.
what's up, Amy? How's it going?
Great.
We have Jeff. How's it going, Jeff?
Good. How are you?
Good. We have Joe. How's it going? Joe giving us a close up. We have a special guest, Ted, local leader from Tesla owners of Silicon Valley. What's up, Ted?
Good morning. How are you? Excited to be
And
on. Thanks for the invite.
yeah, thanks, Ted, for joining us. And Bradford, thank you for joining us as well.
Yeah, hello. Good to be here.
Well, we have a full crew and a full lineup. So I think, let's just kind of just jump into it. Obviously, Bradford, had the awesome opportunity of really hanging outside, actually outside of Joe's close neighborhood in Manteca area. And so, obviously big news coming this past Sunday on the Megapack factory. This thing can probably produce up to 10,000 units per year. That's just pretty insane. Again, this is coming after the other Megapack factory, which was the Giga Mexico. But yeah, I would love to get, everyone's thoughts. We can also jump into, again, Bradford's work that he did specifically in Lathrop. If I said that right.
You did not.
Lathrop.
How do I say it? Lathrop? Lathrop. Okay. So, but yeah, what are people's thoughts? This was, again, breaking news. Obviously, we knew that they were going to expand Shanghai factory in various ways. But, what does this mean? What are your thoughts on this huge announcement?
As I can tell you just from being in this area that we're in right now, for where the Megapack is, it is a boom for the community surrounding it and just all over. There's so many jobs and so many people that are glad to be working for Tesla and getting the benefits and everything that comes with working for Tesla. And I can tell you firsthand, because as somebody who's camped out with Bradford all night, it's really impressive to see. These people are just happy to be at work, and they go to work every day, and and they love it. It's amazing.
And I read that in Shanghai that they're paying way above the average wage in Shanghai for the
awesome.
Tesla factory. So it's an even better opportunity there. And I think we definitely saw that over COVID. There was a lot of bad press about the Foxconn factories and Apple's factories and workers leaving everything behind and fleeing to avoid shutdowns. So you never heard anything about that at the Shanghai Gigafactory. And that's because Tesla it's a really well-paying job. And they treat their employees well, and now they're going to have the Megapack factory as well, which is going to be a huge boon in the community.
Yeah, building the Megapack factories co-located with auto factories or nearby, it's a really good thing for Tesla and resource utilization. I mean, that's when I look at it, kind of putting my supply chain in, that's what I think about. And the fact that if there's something slows here, something has to spike here in one way or another, they can move people, certain functions between operations and get just much better labor utilization. The highest cost aspect of building something in the four walls of a factory is the labor content. And obviously what they do with automation helps, but the fact that they can move between operations is a big plus for Tesla.
Oh, and one other thing that's really of note is the fact that, when Tesla opened Giga Shanghai, they were the only automaker that was able to own their own factory and not have a joint venture partner. And we still don't have any other automakers that have replicated that feat. Now, Tesla needed a new exemption to be able to open an energy factory because the EV factory was specifically under EVs, and they got that too. And now they're going to be opening an energy factory that's wholly owned and not a joint venture. So that it speaks to a lot to Tesla's ability to do business in China, which typically scares a lot of companies away.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone here has experience with various companies from, whatever fields you're in, but I don't think any company has had this much favor by the Chinese government than any other company that I think I've ever seen. Most companies that I've seen go there, I think the only other company that I've thought about as far as American companies that have succeeded very well there has been like LinkedIn. But I could be wrong on that regard. But for the most
Apple.
part, yeah, Apple being another one as well. But yeah, just it's pretty insane. Just some of your comments, Amy. I mean, I don't think people fully understand that. Typically a company like this does not get their own whole factory in these two various categories. Bradford,
Yeah,
go for
I
it.
can.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Bradford. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was excited that they're going to do a Megapack factory in China because people worried that Tesla wouldn't be able to do that over like national security grounds, because Megapacks are very important for the electrical grid. And Tesla would have, some information about the electrical grid if their software was in there. So I thought that was really good. I thought they were going to expand more in the US and then Germany and kind of skip China. So it's great that they didn't. The other thing that's really exciting for me about the announcement is they said they used the word initial capacity. And what I've seen from Lathrop, and I could show you later, is I think there's room for Lathrop to expand, and I'm guessing they'll plan for that factory in China to expand.
Yeah, what's interesting about the again, I'm going to say this name wrong, Lathrop. What's insane about it is they took over. What was it, like a J.C. Penney factory? Was the historical?
Yeah, warehouse. Yep.
And I'm actually surprised, given, well, I guess that's typically what you kind of probably have to do in California rather than building something from the ground up, because it'll take you years and years and lawsuits to get a permit and stuff. But there's so much land specifically in that area where you could build something massive. And so, I think it's going to be probably like the Fremont factory. And again, Joe and Bradford, if you're the experts in that regard, where it's like, Giga Mexico and Shanghai are going to be on a scale that is just going to, blow our minds as far as like the actual output. Just because, again, Lathrop is just going to be maxed out because of space. Unless they start tearing stuff down. But again, that's just a whole juggernaut in itself, trying to build in California.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I'd say about this that's super exciting for me, I actually volunteer on the San Jose Clean Energy Commission, and everybody's all excited about, hey, we want to move to renewables. Obviously, people know the challenge is the intermittency, right? And the fact that every time you put these panels up and so on, you have these peaker plants. And today, those are all natural gas because it's a necessity, right? So, with more shift of the grid required, not only do we need these, plants, but now with the Megapack, you can utilize those instead of having to put up those types of peaker plants. To me, that's super exciting. It's like not only just sort of everybody saying, hey, we need to do this. Tesla is actually the company that does it. And I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's 1,000 peaker plants in the United States. So, that's a huge market right just there to replace the peaker plants. And just 10,000 megapacks, that's 50 a year. So that shows
exactly
the room that Tesla has to grow this market.
And on that, someone tweeted at me this morning. They're like, well, what's the competition for these huge batteries from Tesla? And there are a bunch of other companies that are doing it, but because of how big this market is, I think of the peaker plants as a competition. It's kind of like how the gas cars are the competition for the electric vehicles right now.
Right. And it's not just those plants, but, even a lot of companies now will, start looking at these, right? Hey, how do I get to a net zero? And, this is something where if they have their own solar, they can, utilize this as well if they can't obtain that from the grid.
Yeah, I mean Tesla is
Yeah.
it's just a sleeping giant. The Tesla Energy. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, it feels like the beginning of EV where it's very minimal
exactly.
landscape and there's this massive install base that's needed.
Right.
And everybody, the common question, or you want to ask, like, well, what's the competition? And you will probably be able over time be able to list off some competition. But I think Tesla, with their software resources and the amount of reuse that they're going to get between the energy and auto business, both on the component side and probably on the software side, that's a huge point. And just want to round back this point of like going into China. There's been a lot of like negative press about, Tesla going into, building this business in China. I just want to reemphasize the point. Like I can't think of it. And I've set up manufacturing multiple times in China, and I can't think of an example where a company was allowed to set up at this scale and not have the joint venture. The joint venture means you go into business with some percentage of your company with
Right.
a Chinese national company, and they have some level of access to your IP. So all of that is
Wow.
actually, I mean,
Yep.
this is a
Big deal.
the way Tesla does this.
Enormous.
This is a very, very big deal with the way they approach this.
Yeah. It just stands to show how amazing Tesla is as a company. And a lot of people, I mean, because we're in America, we're kind of jaded on it. And I think we see it all the time. There's so much haterism in this country for that brand, but every other country is like welcoming Tesla with open arms and giving them the world because they realize like what they're doing and what they're on the precipice of.
And I think even, Jeff, I love your point. And I just because I learned something new today, and it's a little bit of probably what Amy was alluding to, but I think, you adding on to what Amy said, just kind of like a light bulb clicked on. And then the second thing I wanted to make a point on is, people are worried about people copying Tesla. Okay, now they're in China, and half being half Taiwanese, half Chinese. I know we can sometimes, especially in the Asian markets, we will copy, and like that's what literally Xpeng is, right? They literally copied Tesla. But the thing is, the difference here is even if you copy them, right? Because Tesla is innovating all the time, like. I remember I got a Powerwall on my house. I got 2 Powerwalls on my house. The guy that came to install it actually was literally the weekend before hanging out with Elon in Boca Chica, installing Powerwalls on top of, all of the homes that they were installing there. But they had just added new features that week. So he's literally probably one of the best installers just because, but he's saying like they are adding and changing things on the Powerwall so fast. It's kind of like the Model 3. The hand is not talking to the other hand. And because of that, they, have these quick trainings. And sometimes they'll get stuck and they actually have to call someone else just because, again, they're constantly just re-innovating. So I think that's the thing here is that even if China did copy specific things, and they already have, right? That's what Xpeng is. It won't matter because, again, they are leading with innovation and technology that is always going to be, and I think Elon has always said this, their manufacturing capabilities and innovation will always be their competitive edge. So them building these gigafactories, building the machine that makes the machine is always going to be their competitive edge. And that's the difference. I think Elon made a statement too that I think pissed a bunch of people off, and not necessarily saying I agree, but, he said patents are dumb. And, there's some companies, and I won't name the companies, that literally just live off of making patents just so that they can essentially hoard or go after other companies for lawsuits. And that's literally how they make their money. So I think, to piggyback on what Jeff and Amy said, so now you have a corporation that is going in to China that literally is not doing a joint venture and is going and has no reason to share their IP or their data with any other joint venture. And you also have a situation where they're going into a market. They're like literally the one company that I would say maybe the people that are going to copy would hate the most. Like this is the company that you really can't copy. But yeah, any final thoughts on that? I don't know, Bradford, from your work, also just hanging outside of the, the one in California, like, do you have any thoughts on and observations potentially that, or indicators of what this could mean for Shanghai?
Well, I want to talk about patents for a second. Is that even if a company can look at the patents, they still need to figure out how to make the product. And what we've seen by watching Tesla is that it could be very hard to make the product. It's easy to have the design, but it's 100 times harder to actually make it. And Jeff knows about that. So I think that's one big reason why Tesla really doesn't care about the patents being out. And I want to provide some important context for Megapack as far as demand is growth of solar. China is growing their solar, I think, bigger than any other country out there. I've heard numbers like they're growing by 100 gigawatt hours this year, or maybe 160. So you think about, or gigawatts, I mean. So you think about the amount of power that's coming out. If you just want 1 hour of storage, it would be something like maybe 320 gigawatt hours of Megapacks. So Tesla's only going to be able to make 40 of these, 40 gigawatt hours once they reach capacity. So there's going to be a lot of demand, and as more solar comes along, the electrical grid can get more wobbly. And we've seen in California that the growth in solar is kind of tapered off. And I think one reason for that is up until this point, stationary storage has been in scarce supply.
Yeah, no, thanks, Bradford. Joe, did you want to say something?
No, I was just agreeing.
Well, awesome. I thought we could also just transition partially, we brought Ted in this week to really, again, I know a lot of people. So what happens with these price cuts is the typical question is, it becomes a demand issue. We hit on this a little bit last week, but obviously with the recent price drops happening last week, this week is more of I thought we could follow up, should Tesla advertise? What's the demand issue? Again, this is all the typical questions most Tesla bulls probably hear. It's kind of feels like it's almost like batting practice again. But I thought, we could just kind of remove some of the, disclaimers out there. And I don't know, maybe we'll pass it to you, Ted, just because, we want to hear what you have to say on this. But, I know we've heard a lot on, hey, Tesla's just having issues with, inventory. And, they should, that's why they're lowering these prices. They should advertise. But
and so I think that a couple of things, and just sort of putting my marketing hat on, if you will, it's like what I've been doing for the last number of years in tech. That what's unique about Tesla is, that where they've come thus far, right? And so there's actually a sort of a culture of the company. I wouldn't call it an underdog status, but I would just say we're different, right? We just don't do the conventional type of things. And I believe that is sort of one of the attractions of, what's allowed them to become where they are. And so if you look, I actually was just checking yesterday, what's the inventory story, right? The Model Y is still, depends where you are, out a month or a couple months. The other devices seem to be shorter, more available. So I think in terms of, supply and demand, they're probably kind of at a particular balance point. But again, you sort of have to circle back to the mission of the company, right? And so they look at it, and I think Elon's just looks at it and says, the lower that we can drive the cost down of these vehicles. I mean, and again, that's what, their whole story is, the more that people will pick up and adopt it. I think the biggest thing that they could be doing, it's just driving education into the market. And I say this because in the Bay Area, so I grew up on the East Coast, moved out to the Bay Area about 10 years ago. And here it's just we just sort of assume, right? You fall into this trap. You drive around and you can't throw a stone without hitting a Tesla, right? But it's not like that. I'm serious, right? I mean, how often do you have to drive before you see a Tesla? Probably less than 5 minutes or maybe a minute.
Yeah.
And so when I was in on the East Coast a couple of weeks ago, I was shocked because it was like all of a sudden, I had to reframe my mind, and I was in and around Boston, and yeah, there was one here or there, but nowhere near what it is in the Bay Area. And so, you sort of have to realize that there's a lot of education, and there's a lot more that I think people need to sort of understand. And that's really where, if I were to say, hey, Tesla, what should you be doing? That's really what I think. It's like, hey, explain to people that they're less expensive to own. Explain to people you don't have to hassle with a dealer. Explain to people that the maintenance is nil, right? All of these types of things, the safety of them, right? All these other intangibles aside from the EV thing. And I think that's the next thing for them.
Yeah, I think that education is going to be paramount as we progress into the future of when EVs is just ubiquitous as gas vehicles are right now. And to your point about safety, I think that's one of the things. Like, I was watching a panel the other day, and they honestly thought Mercedes was safer than Teslas. It's like no, like, what reports have you missed?
Right.
Like,
yeah,
safer than Volvos even. It's like wow, like, people just totally aren't really, they're not as clued in as we are. And I say that all the time about the bubble that we live in, and people don't realize like man, I've been to the East Coast. I went to Boston last year, and I was the same way. I was like, what the heck? Like, I had rented a Model X from a guy who actually moved from California to Boston, and we were driving our Model X, and everybody was just like, what the heck is that? Never seen one of those before. Like, it was some spaceship. It was wild.
And I would like to say that I wish that we would divorce the narrative between, do we need to educate owners about Tesla, and if there's a demand question, if there's affordability question, because we're actually letting the bears determine the story and then reacting to it, rather than separating it out as two completely separate issues. Because what's going on with the prices, we're still above 2019 prices. We had a COVID shock to the supply system. And Jeff, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about that as soon as I make one or two more points, that really dramatically raised the prices. On the last earnings call, they said that a lot of their supply contracts are pegged to indices, and they were coming down, but not enough quite yet. So aluminum and I think steel were both down 20 and 30%. So that's a significant cost reduction. And now we're 3-4 months later past that earnings call, and Tesla is now able to start passing on some of those COVID related supply shocks that dramatically raise the prices. And now we're on the other side, and they're seeing deflationary pressures in the prices of the goods. So I would really like to keep these things as kind of separate when we're looking at it. And then if you look at Master Plan 3, the goal now is 1.4 billion EVs. And the new cars sold every year depends on who you talk to, but the max size of that market is 70 million. So you're really not moving the world in any type of quick fashion to a sustainable future unless Tesla relentlessly lowers their cost and drives down market and starts actually getting to the point where someone's going to buy a new Tesla versus buying a used gas car. And that's how we get to a sustainable energy future. And that's what the Gen 3 platform is going to be about. And we have a lot of supply things that Tesla has been a lot smarter about not talking about, things that will generate demand. But of course, the Gen 3 platform is going to generate massive amounts of demand without any advertising. The Highland Model 3, if those pictures that were just leaked is what the car really looks like, it's going to generate massive amounts of demand right there. And then what happens when full self-driving is solved? And if you want full self-driving, you have to get a Tesla. But at some point, Tesla will need to advertise if they want to get to 20 million cars a year.
Yeah, we're not there yet, but I agree.
Talk a little bit more about the supply contracts and how that works.
Yeah. First off, I love the input from Ted and you, Amy. You're thinking the exact same way. It's like, one is there probably is some education around the state, and Joe made this comment too, around the safety of the vehicle, both if you're in a collision, like it's the safest thing to be inside of, and then with FSD, just crash prevention. there's something about having the safest vehicle in the world to avoid collisions, and then if you're in the event of a collision, you're inside the safest cavity that you could be inside of. I think there's something there, but back to Amy's point, they should be actually these should be separate conversations around demand generation versus like education, and I firmly believe that. Now, on the supply chain side, there's a couple of things. I'm going to write a tweet thread about it. A bunch of people have asked me to talk about, because the pricing, there was another pricing change overnight for Europe as well.
Mhm.
And I am going to write a thread about this a little bit later, but there's a couple of points I want to get into. One is I think the magnitude of like what happened, and Amy started talking about this, of what happened at the beginning of COVID and throughout that period is really not known to 99.9% of people, especially like if you're not in a factory operation and you're not
Mhm.
buying material and having to buy labor and build product and ship it somewhere. You actually don't, it's hard to understand the magnitude of what happened. I mean, what happened on the logistics side, what happened on input pricing. I'll go into in a couple examples. But the other thing you can't have really happening at the same time is if you believe we're in a recession or there's a recession coming, you can't believe that that's happening and input prices and the cost to build products aren't actually coming down dramatically. So if you believe that there's recessionary risk out there from a demand perspective, you can't believe at the same time that it still costs the same amount to build product. Because when those two events, when that event happens, your input prices on commodities, your cost for labor, all of those things start declining dramatically. And we're seeing that in the data right now with commodities.
Right.
So a couple of things. One is just 4 or 5 bullet points. One, logistics, dramatic change from the beginning, middle,
Mhm.
and now call it end of COVID, and we're outside on the outside of it. I mean, literally, we were 10x in some logistics routes and in terms of cost. And now it's not fully back to pre-COVID, but it's very close. And I don't think people understand that Tesla has to move vehicles, to get them to their end consumer, or otherwise it's not a sale.
Right.
The other thing is where Tesla builds product relative to where their consumers are. Now with opening Austin and with opening Berlin, there is less of, cross-country transit of vehicles, and that's a significant, you're talking, many thousands of dollars in some situations. The other thing is that end of quarter rush, where in the second quarter of last year, due to COVID, they shipped 70% of their product in the last month, and even in the third quarter was still in the 60s. And they've been steadily improving. In the fourth quarters in the 50s. When you're doing that, you're calling every logistics carrier, you're calling every inbound supplier, and you're telling them to expedite. And when you tell suppliers to expedite, you're paying them a fee because they're probably going to be working overtime. And same with the logistics carriers as well. You're paying expedite fees to them. All of those are normalizing right now at this point. So the logistics thing is a big thing. Factory conversion is another big thing on the pricing discussion. From a year ago today, I think I remember, John, your interview with Elon talking about the factories in Austin and Berlin kind of being a quote unquote furnace. Well, they're a furnace because they're running at under 5% of their planned utilization. So you have to bring in the capital, you have to bring in the labor, you're training the labor force, but there's no product coming out the other side. And now, by all public records, these factories are more than half full, and they're being well more fully utilized versus where they were a year ago. So that has also transpired over the last year. Commodities, we talked a little bit about lithium carbonate is a big one. Aluminum, copper, steel, all these have been rolling over. And if there's inklings of a recession, those are going to continue to decline, and input prices will be lower for people that build product. That's just going to happen. Suppliers, Amy alluded to, we're still not at the pricing from 2019, and that's a good point. And why is that a good point? One, those number one, all of those suppliers and Tesla in their four walls, they're at nowhere near the yield or the complexity that they were then versus now. The yields are higher, the complexity is lower, both at their suppliers and for Tesla right now. And that's a huge deal. And then finally, I just want to make one comment on advertising, because I've been in this position before where we had a huge supply shock, but we actually bought advertising for the quarter. We went out to all these providers and we bought slots. We bought TV, NFL, everything. And then we didn't have the product to ship. Or if the demand isn't there, which may be happening for other auto right now. There's a downside that we don't talk about a lot with advertising, which is you have to go buy these slots in advance and spend that money. And Tesla does not have to do that, at this point. So if there's these ebbs and flow in demand, you're not sure of consumer demand, one of the last things you want to do is put an outlay for something like that. So anyway, I just wanted to hit a couple of points on that and where the price. So we really need to be reset next week when we see earnings. And we really need to understand, okay, what actually happened in Q1? Because remember, and by the way, in Q1, you have to understand the pricing changes happened 2 to 3 weeks within the quarter, but there wasn't 100% awareness of that. There's not 100% awareness when a pricing change happens. And then there's a 2-week cutoff at the end of the quarter where those builds don't count for revenue. So if you really think about it, that was not a 13-week quarter under the new pricing regimen. It was maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you think that their pricing, just based on your experience, is their cost lower now than just before COVID?
I would, yes.
What would your guess? Yeah, that would be my guess too, right? And so, like Amy said, the pricing is higher than what it was still.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's going to be puts and takes. There may be some hangover effect from COVID. I don't know. Like, for example, labor may be, there's no data that says labor is lower than it was pre-COVID. So that's a huge component. But Tesla's also been automating, and they've seen this, right? They've been automating and removing a lot of operations from the factory. So you have to count that. So there's a lot of puts and takes that can go back and forth, but the way they built a car in 2019 versus the way they built a car in 2013 in terms of level of automation and then being higher and then amount of labor being much lower, those facts you can take to the bank.
I wanted Bradford, did you want to make some comments as well?
Yeah. Just so people don't think we're a bunch of fanboys and fangirls. On safety, the IIHS, it's run by the insurance industry. They do crash tests, and it's very important to know how possible it is for someone to be injured or to die in a crash. And when the Tesla S, X, 3, and then Y were tested, sequentially, they were the safest vehicles from a crash test standpoint that they had ever tested. I think that's a really big deal.
Yeah, by survivability of the impact, yeah.
On pricing, Amy talked about like a used gas car versus a new Tesla, and we're already there in a lot of respects. A used BMW X5 it now costs more than a new long-range Model Y, and the BMW has like 40,000 miles. I've looked at these online from CarMax, and CarMax is reasonable, with their pricing. That really shocked me.
Yeah, it's surprising.
I think it's a big deal. I wish there was, more awareness. Tesla can do some targeted advertising online. They can do some advertising with, like when people go to the website and then they abandon like building a car or whatever, they can do it with that. But there's limits to how much they could pour into internet advertising. And I think where maybe Elon stepped in is like, there's this point where it becomes this crutch where people want to keep adding more and more money. But the more you add to internet advertising, just from what I understand, it gets much, much less efficient over time.
Well, the other side of that is also the fact that a rising tide lifts all boats. And once every company is making EVs, it's not really going to make a difference. Like as we saw with the Super Bowl of last year, like all these Audi advertisements and stuff like that, and Tesla
Right.
search results.
Nobody
like
could
sky
deliver
high.
but Tesla.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I
mean,
think it's just you realize that it's coming. So
yeah. I mean, I think
Cybertruck is going to turn a lot of heads too when that's on streets. That'll be a big advertising moment for Tesla.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you the other area in education which people don't talk about, but again, we should, is the rate of charging. I actually know someone who bought an ID3 and he didn't have a home charger, so he was relying on EA and all these other things. He said it was too much time out of his life because the rate of that thing charges at is slow, even for DC. So
yeah, that happened to a good friend of mine. Sorry to cut you off, but his name is Ben, the EV guy, and he had bought a Mach 3 right when it came out. You know what I mean? He had no preconceived notions, but had a hard time charging. Right now he has a Model 3. It's just like, I mean, I think he had it for like 3 weeks and was like, okay, this isn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
But that's another problem of the situation, right? Like EA and EVgo and all these companies, they need to get better at that infrastructure, which is, which is a big part of the argument. Like, I mean, it would be great if everyone did use the NACS, but it's just not happening right now. Like, well, first of all, it's not really rolled out to everybody here in North America, but imagine once that does get rolled out, like that's the most reliable network of EV charging across the country, even though most people will charge at home. They don't even realize that. But when it comes to traveling.
Yeah, Amy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just one other thing about pricing quick is that the way that the press likes to portray this and the way that bears like to portray this, because they're trying to create market volatility, because there's a lot of money to be being made trading a volatile stock, is that Tesla is reactionary in this pricing, that they're all of a sudden they're surprised when they have this extra inventory and they got to go and slash prices to clear it out. And that what they're completely ignoring is that Tesla has a variable pricing model, the same way that airlines do. And so I kind of laugh every time I see one of these stories, because it would be like if someone was tracking the prices of the seats on my flight to Singapore, and every day you checked, that seat would be a different price based on how many first class seats they sold to this week versus next week, and how long far away the flight is. And Tesla uses a similar model, and they have recently changed what they're going for with the model. It used to be that they were going for the Model 3 to be priced $300 below the average car that was being sold in the United States. And now they have depegged the model from that. And the Model S was 2 times the average price. There's a good reason for that. A, they're getting massive efficiencies of scale, so it's costing them a lot less. B, they want to ramp up Master Plan 3 and the overall adoption of EVs, because competition still hasn't come. And then the last thing that's going on here is Tesla is entering an era of massive scale, where the sheer number of vehicles that they're going to move is a lot more. And if Tesla can start delivering next to all these factories, as Jeff was talking about, and get rid of those logistics costs, that allows them to charge a lot less for the car. And that is also how you get to replacing that 1.4 billion cars on the road.
Sorry, I thought Joe was going to say something. Maybe he was just moving his hand. But yeah, no. So I wanted to do a quick time check in that I thought we would hit on 2 other points, and then I actually wanted to get into the JB nomination and Tom Zhu's compensation plan, just because I know we weren't able to completely unpack all of that. But with that, before I kind of fully unpack that, Tesla continues to dominate. This one, actually, to be honest, was probably the most, for me personally, when everything is starting to really sink in. Because I think actually Amy and maybe even Jeff, earlier conversations on when we were trying to unpack China, again, the fact that they're beating out BYD at this point, given the fact that their costs are higher, it's like, I guess what I'm saying is it's more, their MSRP is higher than BYD, but they are now the most expensive, most profitable, and best-selling car for the passenger category in China, which is just insane, given, again, they are not the cheapest one out there. Mm-hmm. So for them to do this is, again, this is just going to probably continue for the next, potential, 18 months, maybe even longer, depending on, again, their roadmap and how that changes. But, finally the Model Y has kind of taken the crown, especially in China, which for the longest time people said, oh, well, they can't compete in China. And this is the Model Y. This is not even their cheaper compact car, which may be coming at some point. We know it's coming at some point, but they continue to just knock it out of the park. Any quick thoughts on this?
Just one. I mean, just not only is it the most expensive car on that list, it answers the question everywhere kind of Tesla competes in the price tier and geography, they tend to dominate the tier that they're in. But what also is interesting on that list is I believe Tesla makes more OE percentage and gross margin percentage than any of the manufacturers listed on that list. Yeah. So they're producing lower cost vehicles. They're also lower OE, lower GM. So not only are they selling the highest quantity, but they're actually doing it at the highest OE and GM.
Yeah, that's insane. Any other thoughts to piggyback on Jeff?
Well, I'm just shocked that Tesla sold more than the Wuling Mini. That's a $6,000 car.
Yeah, that's insane.
Well, with the refresh Model 3, they'll, also probably have a lower cost structure, and it'll just help revive that product in all markets.
Yeah. And go ahead, Amy.
I would just say it just goes to show what Elon Musk and others have said, that small price cuts for Tesla can create massive differences in demand. So what happened here is Model Y lowered the price, and a lot of people that thought that Tesla was outside of their budget all of a sudden realized even if it was a stretch, they could afford it, and they did.
Yeah, no, it's I mean that's definitely one of the clear points, is that you just move the price of these cars down 1, 2, 3,000. You just open up hundreds of thousands of cars additional to be sold every certain threshold. Obviously, I don't know the exact math, but as they continue to potentially drive the price down and save tons and tons of money on their logistics and supply chain, and continue to innovate and own the full stack, which is where they're headed, that is just going to continue they'll be able to optimize all of their margins, along with potentially and still keeping them healthy and continue to drop the price.
Can I make one constructive comment though on pricing, just to be, so we're just to ask a little bit of sanity at some point. Well, no, I always try to put kind of a black hat on, like, think, okay, how could I think about the bear side of this? And it's not really the bear side of it. It's also kind of like my experience is in selling product. At some point, Tesla is going to have to, maybe it's a comment that they're going to have to put out there of like, hey, we're not sure how long, we're going to continue to be just on this slope. Meaning, like, you don't ship a product and then you don't just take its price down every single quarter. There's something about the frequency that I'm not sure of if it's the best thing yet. So I'm still kind of thinking through this, because there's people that are inside of Tesla that are paid to know what the cost of the vehicle will be 3 months from now, 6 months from now. They're supposed to be able to predict input pricing. They're supposed to be able to predict where they see their factories running at, and they should know what a Model Y will cost to build on September 1st, 2023, and therefore you can still deliver these price reductions to the marketplace, but you do them in bigger chunks with less frequency. So I'm kind of like thinking through that. I'm not sure if the frequency is the right thing. I'm not saying that Tesla shouldn't continue to take their cost structure down and deliver benefits to consumers. I'm more in my head just kind of questioning, like, is the frequency the right thing, or is there going to be some impact on consumers? And I think, again, we have to listen to what they say in the earnings call next week to be properly, I think, kind of reset of like, where are they at today and where do they see this going from a guidance perspective?
Yeah. I have one other point on that, and that's important thing is that Tesla doesn't have dealers. So as Tesla's doing these price cuts, so are the dealers and all the other
Yeah.
automakers, but it's happening at the dealer level, and so it's being
Right.
hidden. And so
Right.
Yes.
Tesla will always be a little
Yep.
bit more reactionary, if you want to use that word, or change the prices a little bit more, because it's all happening at the manufacturer level, and there's no dealers, or even like, Thanksgiving sales, where they clear out all the inventory and then go on to the next, where that the clothing manufacturer is divorced from the store that's selling it. In Tesla, that's never going to be the case.
Yeah, the optics are completely different. I agree.
Yeah.
Let me mention from the highest level, when Tesla's like working its demand curve. So if this is the highest price, and this is a low quantity, and this is a high quantity, Tesla has to work a curve for each product it has. So as it wants to sell more, as it wants to push quantity further out to the positive, it has to lower price. And
Right.
it's just going to be a truth as time goes on. Tesla owners can only do so much to promote and expand, awareness. Tesla will have to continually lower prices as they, grow production by 50% and then double every couple of years.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I think. I mean, I do think that their price cuts, especially at the beginning of the year, obviously it threw people for a loop that bought on 12/31 and before. But they had to react to the incentives that kicked in without knowing what the government was going to do. And so I think that those were strategic. But yeah, I definitely think that Tesla, they'll make the decision on a whim as they see the market, because I think for them, they have a pulse on the market probably better than any other company I personally think I've ever seen. Especially like last year, Elon laying people off in May or June, knowing that this recession was going to come. They haven't announced any layoffs. I don't know if they're going to have any layoffs as they continue to ramp, but the price changes, may not always make sense or may seem a little weird, but at least I think the last couple have made a lot of sense, at least from my take. But I just wanted to hit, we can just maybe quickly look at this. This is Amy's tweet, literally about US EV registrations. Again, Tesla sales are greater than 2 to 10 10s combined. Literally, like all those numbers, you stack 2 through 10 together, they literally are doing more registrations in the US than all of these companies.
GM is so close, though. So close.
So jumping into, obviously, I thought, I know Amy, I believe last week, you weren't able to make it, and Jeff, I know you may have additional thoughts as well. But obviously we know that JB was nominated to the Tesla board, but I would love to get your thoughts. Obviously, even Elon, this I believe was your first Elon response.
Yes, it was.
And I think you're getting a mug with it. But
my sister bought me one.
Yeah, congratulations on that. But yeah, do you want to kick us off on your thoughts on this nomination and what this means for Tesla?
Well, there was when at the time when we first met, and there was just so much people being upset with what Tesla was doing in Tesla's direction, and people wanting to run as an activist member of the board of directors, and that for me was highly concerning, because Tesla is still just beginning the hypergrowth phase. So you need the type of visionaries on board that are willing and able to do the hypergrowth, to bring the company to where it can be. And there's nobody better for that than JB Strobel. And he was actually who I wanted, and I was tweeting about it back January, February, that he would be an ideal choice. And then I saw that he was actually who they chose, and I'm just thrilled. I mean, like he works well with every single one of the senior execs at Tesla. Now he's been elevated to the board level, which allows him to be the grand visionary. And he and Elon Musk's vision is very complementary to each other, but it's not quite the same. They have different areas of expertise that works really, really well together. So I just think that Tesla's future is bright, and I would love to see more appointments like this to the board of directors going forward in the future. It's just Tesla doing things differently again.
Yeah, he's great points. He's very well liked by Tesla employees. knowing many and knowing some of the executives as well. Very well liked and respected. So to be liked and respected at the same time sometimes is a difficult tightrope. And he is both very well liked and respected, and I think most importantly by Elon. So have someone on the board who also has that insight as well as like what's going on in energy, given the company that he started. This is a really good move for Tesla, and I'm glad to see it. We actually, given, like if you look at the makeup of the board, I think it's really good to bring in some additional technical horsepower to it to kind of like, bounce decisions back and forth. And he'll be in a different, he's known Elon for 20 years, right? But he'll kind of be in a different role or kind of position than what he was when he was inside of the company. And people have to understand, like, he built, the energy side of the vehicle, like from the ground up, hired the teams, hired the people, and really built all of this from the ground up. So a lot of Tesla's success can be directly attributed to the decisions and the strategy that he put in place on when I say the energy side, I'm talking about powertrain, motor, inverter, battery.
Yeah. Well, it's strategic too, right? Because if they can get the materials from Redwood City, right, and all that, it just helps the ecosystem and all the supply chain.
Definitely. And one other thing I wanted to hit on was, let's just see. The next thing I wanted to hit on was, and Jeff, I'll probably pass it back to you. Tom Zhu's compensation plan. Typically, I guess it's very abnormal to have almost a 7-year projected salary out. So what is this kind of like, what did this mean to you, Jeff, when you saw it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, when I first read it, I first read it as, vesting, but it's expiration, but it's still important. So that's the schedule and timetable in terms of he's granted a bunch of options at various pricing, and how long he can hold those options to expiration before he would have to. Options expire at some point, so you have to cash them out.
Yep.
So the fact that they're going out to 2030, I think it's a good sign. And to me, the bigger sign was they're paying Tom Zhu a lot of money, and they're paying their top executives tremendous money. I don't think they're going to be able to. They're not going to have to worry about executive departure the way that Tesla is paying their key executives. And that, for me as an investor, that was and someone who follows and appreciates and admires the company, that was really good for me to see.
That was a big part of Autoline Daily's report card was how much the management gets paid and how they produce for the company.
Yeah, I wonder if Tom is the person who might succeed Elon. Maybe it could be JB because they're bringing JB to the board, but they might be paying Tom Zhu with these options, north of $1 billion, depending on how much the stock price increases. To me, that it signifies a high level of importance, but also Elon's leaning on Tom Zhu quite a bit more. Tom's going back and forth between the U.S. and China, and I think he's even been to Berlin, if I'm remembering right. So he's taken a pretty heavy load on his shoulders.
And I would say that I think that he's almost more the Glenn Shotwell role, where he's the execution guy. I got to talk with him at Investor Day, and he as I was talking to him, he kept pulling his phone out to check what the factories were producing. Down to the moment, and they were watching that day because they were going to hit the 4 million car. So he was talking a little bit about that. He was like, I could tell when Berlin took a break because all of a sudden, Austin's production started going up and Berlin's going down. So he is really minutely tuned in. But I really see it as a combination of Drew Baglino, who he's the innovation man. He's the big vision. What new products should we be doing? And Tom Zhu is the execution. And together, along with Zach Kirkhorn, who's going to keep the financials and the company profitable, that's like the trifecta of the management team going forward. And then, of course, on Investor Day, we saw all those very, very strong business leaders up on the stage. And I know, Jeff, you know some of those people to be able to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, when you get below the Drew, the Zach ranks, and Tom, there's some really talented executives on that stage, and even that ones that were not on stage. And just I can't keep going back to this, where they're setting the bar for kind of like the Drew, Zach, Tom Zoo's salary, total compensation. That is definitely precipitating to that next level. And what it does is it invites really good talent to come to Tesla and stay. And I don't think you're going to be hearing about the rate of executive departures that you may have heard of a few years ago. Based on, this is a big move. This is not Tesla from 5 years ago in terms of what they're doing with comp. And remember, this core of people grew the company from a 20 or $30 billion company to a $700 billion company, and will be much higher. So I think it's actually very well deserved, and I like the golden handcuffs on this group of people, and I think it goes well below them as well.
Yeah, I wanted to make one comment. I think, what I think happened with, sorry, just stepping back. I think obviously all of us saw the whole Twitter BBC thing that happened this week, and I think there was this huge drama between. It's a little bit, and it's going to relate back to Tesla, but in how he literally I think bought like a roughly 9% of Twitter. I believe he had tried to join the board of Twitter and he got kind of pushed to the side. I think not everyone was on board. Long story short, he makes an offer to buy them. And then they say, we don't want you until, essentially like we would rather die than have you as a CEO. And then he's like, okay, well, I won't buy you. And then, no, you have to buy us, like with a gun to his head. And, but I think what happened was, from the time, I even saw him, I think in May / early June, whatever it was, to, him ramping, I believe in November where he had to buy it. What did he start doing? He started preparing probably, because I think legally, contractually, he had to buy it no matter what, even if he was probably able to prove the bots, or again, I don't know the contract that well, but he started to prepare, especially with SpaceX. SpaceX is going to launch the Starship next week, which is going to, get us a step closer to getting to another planet. But he handed that to Gwyneth, right? And then also, what has he been doing at Tesla, right? He knows that he needs, he's been building this rock star team, and this was kind of, I think, that light switch that he needed to hit on. And ultimately, that's what Amy went to that, but that's what they showcased at the Investor Day, and where people had opportunities to go and talk to these amazing executives. But right now, more than ever, because I think he's kind of getting out. Thankfully, I think he's kind of, and again, I could be wrong here, I think he's kind of getting out of this production hell that he was at Twitter for the past 6 months. They're about to break even. He's able to kind of breathe a little bit. But he knew going into this and being in the situation where, again, everyone felt like all the Tesla investors that were kind of new to the game felt like the world was coming to an end because it had dived 70%. He was just flipping on the switch for the people that he knew he had to lean on and just saying, hey, guys, hold my beer right now. Like, I need to go take care of something. Maybe I don't know exactly why he necessarily made the offer, but I think when he did, I think maybe he didn't necessarily realize like how bad it was, because he said on that interview, 25% bots versus the 5% that he had originally. So imagine a warehouse. He gave this example. You have 100, sold goods, and they tell you 5 of them are probably damaged. Now you imagine 25% of your bots or your, the things in the warehouse are broken. That's just, it completely changes the game. So I think, that's what I'm pretty excited about, specifically. I know, Jeff, you went on the compensation, and then, bringing on JB. This is the time that he needs to kind of be like, all right, guys, and I'm not saying he screwed up by doing this per se, but he's like, hey, I need to go take care of this. Give me a moment. Right. And it's not that he's distracted, because I still think the great thing is that that's the funny thing about this. That's the irony in this whole thing, is that, yes, Tesla moved to Austin, but then they came back and were like, hey, California is the headquarters of engineering, which is the most important piece of the pie, in my opinion. It's the innovation, right? It's where, everything is happening. FSD, all that autonomy, everything's happening out of here. And then he buys Twitter. So now the guy's probably in California more than he probably ever thought. Because I know when Elon moved there, he brought a ton of his, obviously his companies, a lot of his big investors, a lot of his friends and family, they all moved out there. And now he's kind of like settling in here again almost.
And I think you should be critical, and as an investor, you should always kind of like be looking at things. And I was concerned in terms of, first off, he's not a normal person. Like, our understanding of bandwidth and his are two different things. But at the time, in that fall timeframe and winter timeframe, I was concerned. But when I saw the contents of the investor day, and I saw it from beginning to end, and then I watched it again, and then I watched it again, and I'm like, this vision and strategy, and then the actual execution, like the cogs are actually turning. This is not the vision and strategy of somebody who is thinking part-time or working part-time as a CEO. This is better than any other auto or energy company presentation that I've seen ever. And so the results matter.
It's not a plan.
They actually delivered the results, which is, it's the investor day plan, but they actually delivered that vision. That's not somebody who's kind of part-time thinking. If that is their part-time thinking, I'd hate to see what, full-time is. So, that to me turned the switch on of like, we haven't missed a beat. We're in a difficult economic climate, and we've got to navigate through that. But that presentation was amazing. Just look at other full-time auto CEOs and what vision are they presenting for the future or energy.
Do we have
they have a lot of CG.
Amy, what were you gonna say?
Well, we're lucky enough to have Bradford with us, and he was at Lathrop and watching the Megapacks leave. They have him show that or talk.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And I think if anyone needs to drop off, go ahead. Feel free to. I know, just doing a quick time check, but just a quick. We're gonna get into Lathrop and all the work that Bradford had done. But make sure to give everyone on here a follow. I'm gonna obviously Amy at SF 3_ Tahoe. We have at Jeff Lutz, the Jeff Lutz. At Ted or TOE
Teodoro. It's my actual first name, Teodoro J.
Okay, Teodoro J. And then
I should have put it in the description.
Yeah, but it's in the tweet. If you're watching on Twitter, it's all there. And I'll update the link as well on YouTube if you're joining. But yeah, if you need to drop, feel free to. And then obviously Joe at SJV Tesla, and then at Brad's Fergeson as well if you want to follow him. But yeah, let's get into the Lathrop. I don't know. Do you want to kind of give an overview, Bradford, of kind of your work?
Let's talk about why I went, and then what I thought the opportunity was. So, watching a factory like Shanghai, there's cars coming out there like I think 22,000 a week or something like that. So to be able to count them on a daily basis is kind of hard. Maybe if they're coming all out of one door, you could do it. But with the Megapack, it comes out of one door in Lathrop on the east side of the building. There's one gate they come out of. They hang out in the parking lot. It's very obvious to see when they pull them out by truck. They have to use a flatbed trailer because they weigh 82,000 pounds. So what I want to do, because of how important I think the product is and how profitable it could be once they work through some initial orders, I want to go out there and count and see what is production like. Is it at 24 a day? Is it at 5 a day? Or is it somewhere in between? So that was the reason why I went out there. And what we did at the beginning was we took a drone shot of the parking lot to see how many Megapacks were in there at the start. And there were 67. And then we took a drone shot at the end to see how much the parking lot grew or shrank by, and then we could add that number to how many left by truck to see how many came out of that building during those 6 days. So that was like the basic premise. And essentially we watched a factory for 24 hours a day for 6 days. And I'll spoil it here. We saw 42 come out by truck. Nice number there, like the number 42. And then the parking lot grew by 16. So you take 42 plus 16, that's 58. So it's very close to 10 a day. And I have to confess, it was extremely boring with 2 Megapacks coming out. I mean, with a Megapack coming out every 2 hours or so, there were times when I was on my phone and I may have missed one, because when they pull out of the gate and they turn left where the truck is turning left, it's like a minute before they're gone. So if I'm looking down, and I could have missed some. So that's my confession for the day.
It's great work, actually. That's the way you have to do it to really understand what the output is.
Yeah, it's not going to be a smooth ride for Tesla to be able to recognize this financially. But these Megapacks coming out are the Megapack 2 XL. And this is what Tesla introduced in Q1 of last year. So there's some initial pricing where Tesla raised the price, I think in September or something like that. There's some initial pricing they're working through. But I think once they get through that, the margins, the profits on them could be north of 40%. And that's before tax, so without including tax. So it's a really big deal. It could increase Tesla profits by 20% just at the rate I observe. But if they can kind of work through the bottleneck, and we'll talk about that in a second, then Tesla could increase their earnings by 40% versus what they did last year, just with this Megapack, this Megapack out of nowhere. And at the current rate, Tesla is going to exceed what Wall Street has projected for them in 2025 as far as profits from the Megapack. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I shared the link. So if you refresh this video, you can check out Bradford's description. I can quickly show, I don't know if you want to specifically jump to a specific thing. And technically, this is going to be the first time I'm trying it, but it looks like we could potentially share it with, here, it looks like
we 456 or 457 is when the real action starts, the fireworks.
I mean, the margin that this could bring to the company is really significant. Rob Maurer had a write-up on that, and he was just doing an estimate. You put whatever margin number you want on it, right? But the 2 million number does seem pretty realistic per, and knowing the efficiencies. And again, it's just getting started, right? So as that ramps up, there'll be that much more that'll drop right to the bottom line.
Yeah, Tesla Energy is just a juggernaut in itself. Like even once Tesla started that whole process, I already knew it was just going to be impactful.
So I think it's maybe a little bit further than that, Bradford. It's like 501, but
that's good. Go for it.
6 days or 144 hours. With the help of 3 other members of the Tesla community, we were able to watch the factory for 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I was pulling 12 to 15 hours, and they helped spell me, allow me to sleep.
I was hoping to see a Tesla Semi pull at least one of them, but I guess not yet.
Yeah, I think that's going to be in the next couple of years for sure.
Yeah.
It can be good to be early. On Saturday, this early bird found the worm and took it to its mate.
And I lost a clip on that spot. That's why I put it there. Call this deep due diligence in the investing world.
Yeah.
I mean, like true due diligence. Like it just insane work, man, for all of you guys that went through that and did that. That was
Wow,
awesome.
42, what a number. Here we see the feet of this Megapack clearly match those in the other pictures. As Drew Baglino explains, the Megapack 2 XL weighs 82,000 pounds, which is why Tesla has to use large flatbed trailers to haul them.
And yeah, we can cut it there. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So 42, did you want to hit on anything else, or was there something else maybe?
Yeah. At 720, I want to show a little view of the factory that Tesla shared with us. One was at Investor Day, and another one was on their Megapack announcement.
All right, awesome. Let me share it again. Sorry about that. Let's do this. So which one was it at? 720, you said?
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump here.
Hold out. My guess is that
Go
Tesla
ahead and pause it.
factory is.
Yeah. So what I heard after I left was that this part of the line that we're seeing here is working just fine. It can do 24 a day or 20 plus a day if there wasn't any holdup. But there's other parts of the line where it's fixable and they can correct it. So that's the good news. I thought that was really good news. And on the right side, that's the north side of the building. We're seeing just a ton of cardboard boxes with parts. And I'm not a factory expert, but maybe Jeff can help. But yeah, I wonder if Tesla could put in another line there, and but still be able to run parts to the middle line there. The only issue is on the left side, there's no trucking bay access, so they're kind of blocked in that way. So there's a lot of empty space, which makes me think maybe they can go from 40 gigawatt hours capacity to 80.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing all the electrical drops too, so it looks like they can. You don't usually start a factory at peak capacity. Like you wouldn't do the build out of this facility with just the one line. So I'm sure they have to figure out, more kind of just in time on the material side or a place to put some of the material, but it does look expansionary.
Cool. And then we can go to 749 and keep it paused.
The other way you expand is through increasing the rate. And I'm sure that's what they're focused on.
What we're seeing here is instead of one conveyor belt, there's two. So I think Tesla understood that the previous process would be pretty smooth, and that this next step is the slower part. I think that's part of the reason why they split it out into two. So what I found out is there's an issue with one of the processes or machines where Tesla overestimated what it could do, and they need to double the capacity on this part of the line to be able to go from 10 to 12 a day to 20 to 24 a day. Again, we can see on this part on the left side is the north side of the building. It's all parts. So again, I wonder if they can expand there. So that's what I wanted to share. I'm hopeful that Tesla can get to 20 plus sometime, maybe in Q3 or Q4 after they get this machinery for the end of the line. And then I'm very curious as well to see if they add a whole nother line to it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bradford, for just your work. I mean, this is huge. This is very validating of all of the work that's happening. And, it's awesome you were able to bridge, again, the output with, again, even some of the factories that they're doing. So any final comments? Otherwise, I think, we're fairly far over, but I think we were able to really set the stage for next week. I believe it's Wednesday. Elon's going to be super busy next week. I think Monday, the Starship launch, hopefully, that will go well. And then I think Wednesday, I believe, is the actual earnings call, which, you know, those are always entertaining. And I believe he'll be there, just given, you know, everything that's going on as well. So, but again, I posted everyone, just make sure you refresh. I posted everyone, all the regular hosts, and then the special guests, along with Bradford's amazing work on the Megapack factory, so that everyone can kind of just view it and see what's going on. But thank you, everyone, Amy, Jeff, Bradford, Ted, and Joe, for all coming on and being a part of this. I think, yeah, we hit a new peak, 133 viewers live right now. So really cool to just see, again, finishing up week 3 on this. Feel free to tune in next Friday at 8 PST. We're going to be probably discussing a lot of the earnings and potentially a lot of other major announcements that they make out of there. So thank you for your time, and thank you again for everyone contributing.
Yep. Bye
Thanks.
for now.
Okay. Have a good week.